The key felt cold in my palm, not like the key to a dream, but like a shard of ice pressed into my skin. This was supposed to be the culmination of my life's work, a monument to my family, a haven for my golden years. I stood on the perfectly manicured lawn of the house I'd bought, a house with sweeping ocean views and a kitchen my late wife would have wept to see. But I wasn't admiring the view. I was watching my own daughter Brooks and her husband Gregory change the locks. It was my housewarming party, and I was the only guest not allowed inside. They thought they had taken everything from me. They were wrong. They had only taken what I was willing to lose. My name is Walter Reed. I'm 73 years old, and for 45 of those years I worked as a structural engineer. I built bridges, designed foundations for skyscrapers, and spent my life ensuring that things built to last would indeed last. My wife, Helen, used to say I had concrete in my veins, but she always said it with a smile. She was the grace to my grit, the artist to my architect. We had a good life, a simple one, built on a foundation of love and mutual respect. We weren't wealthy, not by a long shot, but we were comfortable. We saved, we invested wisely, and we poured everything we had into our only child, our daughter Brooks. Helen passed away 3 years ago from a cancer that came on fast and fierce. The loss hollowed me out in a way no professional failure ever could. The home we'd shared for 4 decades suddenly felt cavernous, each room an echo chamber of memories I could no longer share. Brooks was my rock during that time. She and her husband, Gregory Maxwell, were there for me. They'd bring my grandson, Leo, over for dinner, and for a few hours the silence in the house would be filled with a 10-year-old's laughter. Gregory was a character. He worked in finance, something about venture capital, and he had the kind of polished, aggressive charm that made you feel slightly poor just by shaking his hand. He wore suits that cost more than my first car and spoke about money with a casual reverence that always unsettled me. But he seemed to make Brooks happy, and for a father, that's the bottom line. About a year after Helen died, I sold the family home. It was too big, too full of ghosts. I also sold off a portfolio of stocks that I'd been nurturing since my first job. The market had been kind to me. When the dust settled, I was sitting on a sum of money that frankly staggered me. Just over $2 million. It felt like a weight, a responsibility Helen had left me with. It was during a Sunday dinner that the idea for the new house was born. Brooks was lamenting the size of their townhouse. "It's just so cramped, Dad," she sighed, stirring her pasta. "With Leo getting bigger and Gregory needing a proper home office, we're just bursting at the seams." Gregory chimed in, smooth as silk. "We've been looking, Walter, out by the coast in Willow Creek Estates. But the prices, they're astronomical. It's a dream, I suppose. Something for the 5-year plan." A seed was planted. What was I going to do with all this money? Sit on it until I died? I had no use for it. My needs were simple. But Brooks, my only child, and Leo, my only grandchild, I could give them that dream. I could build one last great thing for my family. A legacy. A place where Leo could grow up, where we could have holidays together, where I could sit on the porch in my old age and watch my grandson play on the lawn. "What if I helped?" I offered tentatively. Brooks's eyes lit up. Gregory sharpened. "Dad, you don't have to do that," Brooks said, but her voice was hopeful. No, I insist," I said, a warmth spreading through my chest. For the first time since Helen's passing, I felt a sense of purpose. "Let's go look at houses. My treat." We found it 2 weeks later. It was a magnificent 4-bedroom custom build in Willow Creek. It had a stone facade, a wraparound porch, and a backyard that sloped gently down towards a stand of old oak trees. The inside was all open-plan living, with a gourmet kitchen and a master suite that had its own balcony overlooking the Pacific. It was perfect. The price was $1.4 million. I didn't even blink. "We'll take it," I told the realtor, glancing at Brooks, whose face was a mask of pure, unadulterated joy. She threw her arms around me, tears in her eyes. "Oh, Dad, I can't believe it. You're giving us a kingdom." Gregory clapped me on the shoulder, his grip firm. "Walter, you are a true patriarch, a gentleman of the old school." There was just one piece of business to attend to. My lawyer, a sharp young man named Ben Carter, who had taken over his father's practice, advised me on the best way to structure the purchase. "You could just gift them the money, Walter," he said, peering over his glasses. "But that comes with significant tax implications. And it leaves you with no leverage." "Leverage? Ben, this is my daughter we're talking about." "I know, and I'm sure everything is fine. But you've worked your whole life for this. Let's be smart. I suggest we set up a revocable trust. We'll call it the Walter Reed Family Trust. You will be the sole trustee. The trust will purchase and own the house. You can name Brooks and her family as the beneficiaries, and they can live there, rent-free for as long as you wish. This way, the asset is protected, the tax burden is minimized, and you ultimately hold the keys to the kingdom, so to speak." It sounded sensible. An engineer understands the need for a fail-safe. You build redundancies into every system. I saw it not as a lack of trust in Brooks, but as a responsible way to manage my life savings. A final act of prudent planning. So we did it. The house was purchased by the trust. To Brooks and Gregory, I simply said, "My lawyer is handling the paperwork to make it all clean and tidy." They were so giddy with excitement, they didn't ask any questions. The next 3 months were a blur of activity. I paid for new furniture, top-of-the-line appliances, a landscaper to perfect the gardens. I wanted everything to be flawless. This wasn't just a house, it was my final gift to my wife's memory, a sanctuary for the family she had cherished. I pictured myself in a comfortable guest suite on the main floor, with its own small patio, close to the garden Helen would have loved. Finally, the day came. Everything was perfect. The caterers were setting up, the champagne was on ice, and the house was gleaming. Brooks announced they were throwing a huge housewarming party to thank me and to show off our new home to all their friends. I was to be the guest of honor. As I got dressed that evening, in my best suit, I felt a deep, profound sense of peace. I had done it. I had secured my family's future and my own place within it. I had built one last, perfect foundation. I had no idea it was sitting on a fault line. The party was in full swing by the time I arrived. Cars I couldn't name, with price tags I couldn't fathom, lined the curved driveway. Music drifted from the open doors, a smooth jazz ensemble playing on the back patio. Gregory, ever the showman, greeted me at the door with a booming laugh. "Walter, the man of the hour. Everyone, a round of applause for my father-in-law, the most generous man in California." A smattering of polite applause followed from people in tailored clothes, holding delicate glasses of champagne. I felt a little out of place, a sturdy old workhorse in a room full of sleek racehorses. Brooks kissed my cheek, her smile bright but her eyes slightly distant. "Dad, isn't it amazing? It's a dream, a complete dream." She gave me a quick tour, though I knew the house better than she did. I had overseen the final inspections myself. "And look," she said, waving a hand at the crowd, "all of Gregory's partners from the firm are here. The Wellingtons, the Posts, everyone who's anyone." I just nodded and smiled, trying to share in her excitement. I saw my grandson Leo weaving through the forest of adult legs, a plate of mini quiches in his hand. He saw me and his face lit up. "Grandpa, your room is the best. It has its own fridge," he said before his mother shushed him and sent him off to the kitchen. For the next hour, I was paraded around like a prize bull. Gregory would clap me on the back and introduce me to his friends. "This is Walter Reed. Yes, the Walter Reed. Built this place for us from the ground up, a true testament to family." They would shake my hand, their eyes scanning me with a mixture of curiosity and condescending appraisal, before turning back to their conversations about mergers and market trends. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The view from the great room's picture window was, I had to admit, breathtaking. Gregory tapped a glass with a spoon, calling for everyone's attention. "Friends, colleagues," he began, his arm wrapped possessively around Brooks's waist. "Welcome to our new home, a new chapter for the Maxwell family. Of course, none of this would be possible without one person." He gestured to me. "My father-in-law, Walter, a man who believes in family, in legacy, and in giving his children the wings to fly." More applause. I felt a flush of pride. This was it. This was the moment I had envisioned. And in that spirit of new beginnings, Gregory continued, his voice taking on a more serious, almost somber tone, we have another announcement. As Walter enters his golden years, we want to ensure he has the absolute best care, the most comfortable, secure, and appropriate environment for this stage of his life. A strange feeling, cold and heavy, began to settle in my stomach. This wasn't the speech I was expecting. Brooks stepped forward, taking a piece of paper from her clutch purse. She wouldn't look at me. Dad has worked so hard his entire life, she said, her voice a little shaky. And he deserves a rest. He deserves to be free from the burdens of home maintenance, cooking, and all the little things. He deserves to be with his peers in a community that can cater to his every need. The room was silent now. I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes on me. I stared at my own daughter, my mind refusing to process her words. Gregory beamed, a predator's smile. So we are thrilled to announce that we have secured a premier suite for Walter at the Pinecrest Meadows Senior Living Community. The best in the state. He'll have a full activity schedule, on-site medical staff, and 3 gourmet meals a day. We move him in next Monday. The silence was broken by a wave of enthusiastic, if slightly confused applause. People were smiling, nodding, raising their glasses to me. They thought this was a good thing, a touching gesture from a loving family. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Brooks, who was finally forced to meet my gaze. In her eyes, I didn't see love. I saw a flicker of guilt, quickly extinguished by a cold, hard resolve. I felt the blood drain from my face. Pinecrest Meadows. It was a nursing home, a high-end one to be sure, but a place you go to wait to die. My guest suite, Leo's best room, with its own fridge and patio, it was never meant for me. My voice came out as a strangled whisper. Brooks, what is this? Gregory stepped between us, his smile never wavering. He lowered his voice so only I could hear. This is what's best, Walter. For everyone. The house is too much for you. You'll be more comfortable there. We've handled everything. It's all paid for, a full year in advance. Our gift to you. Your gift, I croaked, my heart hammering against my ribs. My money paid for this house. My money is paying for that place. His smile tightened, a cruel twist of his lips. Details, Walter. The important thing is that you'll be safe. Brooks and I will have power of attorney to manage your affairs, so you won't have to worry about a thing. Now, why don't we step outside for some air? You look a little pale. He put a hand on my arm to guide me towards the patio door. I shook it off, my whole body trembling with a rage so profound it left me breathless. You're kicking me out, I said, my voice rising, loud enough for the nearest guest to turn and stare. You're kicking me out of my own home? Brooks finally spoke, her voice sharp, defensive. Don't make a scene, Dad. It's not your home. It's our home. You bought it for us. This was always the plan. This was never the plan, I roared, the sound raw and wounded. We were supposed to be a family, here, together. Gregory's facade finally cracked. The charming host vanished, replaced by a cold-eyed stranger. The plan has changed, old man. This is a multi-million-dollar asset now. It's not a retirement home for one person. We have a certain lifestyle to maintain, a position in the community, an elderly parent living with us. It's just not practical. It's an encumbrance. Encumbrance, that was the word he used. Not father, not family, an encumbrance. He gestured to 2 large men in black suits I hadn't noticed before, standing near the door. Now, I think it's time for you to go. We've packed a bag for you. It's in the car we called. It will take you to a very nice hotel for the week until your suite at Pinecrest is ready. I looked at Brooks, my heart shattering into a million pieces. I searched her face for any sign of our shared history, of the little girl I taught to ride a bike, of the young woman I walked down the aisle. I found nothing but a stranger's pity mixed with steely determination. Brooks, please, I begged. It's for the best, Dad, she mumbled, turning away to talk to one of her friends, dismissing me as if I were a piece of furniture that no longer fit the decor. The 2 men moved towards me. I didn't resist. The fight had gone out of me, replaced by a deep, chilling numbness. They walked me out the front door, past the expensive cars and the laughing guests who averted their eyes, pretending not to see the old man being escorted from his own housewarming party. As the heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, I heard the sound of a deadbolt sliding into place. The finality of it was like a hammer blow. I was homeless, disowned, and utterly, devastatingly alone. The taxi Gregory had called was as sleek and impersonal as he was. The driver, a young man who wouldn't meet my eye, had been given his instructions. He drove me 20 miles inland, away from the crisp ocean air of Willow Creek, to a part of town where the boulevards turned into dusty streets and the boutique shops were replaced by bail bondsmen and laundromats. He pulled up in front of the Starlight Motel, a two-story L-shaped building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign that had long since lost its S. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a key card and $500 in cash. "They've paid for a week, sir," the driver mumbled before getting back in his car and speeding away, as if eager to escape the grime. My room was on the second floor overlooking the parking lot. The air inside was stale, a mix of old cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. The carpet was a tapestry of faded brown stains. The bedspread was thin and covered in small burn holes, and a single, fly-specked bulb buzzed overhead. A small, boxy television was bolted to the dresser. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress and looked at the bag they had packed for me. A few changes of clothes, my shaving kit, and the blood pressure medication I took every morning. Practical, efficient, cold. They hadn't even packed the silver-framed photo of Helen I kept on my bedside table. The silence of the room was a physical weight. It pressed in on me, suffocating me. An hour ago, I had been the guest of honor in a $1-million home. Now, I was a 73-year-old man in a rundown motel room with $500 to his name. The sheer speed of my downfall was dizzying. I tried to call Brooks. The call went straight to voicemail. Her mailbox was full. I tried again. Same result. I sent a text. "Brooks, we need to talk, please." The message was delivered, but there was no reply. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that she had blocked my number. The night crawled by. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Gregory's smug smile and Brooks's averted gaze. I heard the word encumbrance echoing in the cheap, quiet room. An encumbrance. After 45 years of work, of saving, of providing, that's what I had become to my own child. Was this my fault? Had I spoiled her? Had I raised a daughter who saw her father not as a person, but as a resource to be depleted and then discarded? The questions were a form of torture, each one peeling back a layer of my life and revealing a potential failure. I thought of Helen. Thank God she wasn't here to see this. The shame of it would have destroyed her. The next few days blurred into a miserable haze. I barely left the room. I'd watch the daytime television shows flicker on the screen without really seeing them. I'd eat prepackaged sandwiches from the vending machine down the hall. The $500 was dwindling faster than I expected. I was a ship without a rudder, cast adrift in a sea of despair. The world I knew, the future I had so carefully planned, had been a mirage. On the fourth day, I hit rock bottom. I was staring at my reflection in the grimy bathroom mirror. The face looking back at me was a stranger's, gaunt, pale, with eyes that were hollowed out by grief and disbelief. This wasn't Walter Reed, the confident engineer. This was a broken old man, and for the first time I felt a flicker of what they must have seen. Someone weak, someone to be managed, someone to be put away. The thought terrified me more than anything. Had they been right? In that moment of absolute despair, a different feeling began to surface. It started as a tiny ember in the pit of my stomach, buried under layers of pain and humiliation. It was anger, a cold, hard, structural anger. An engineer's anger. They had miscalculated. They had looked at my foundation and assumed it was weak, that it would crumble under pressure. They had treated me like a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. They had forgotten who I was. I had spent my life building things that could withstand storms, earthquakes, and the relentless pressure of time, and I had built my final project with the same meticulous care. My mind went back to the meeting with my lawyer, Ben Carter. You You ultimately hold the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. The words, which had seemed like a simple legal formality at the time, now rang in my ears like a clarion call. The Walter Reed Family Trust. A revocable trust. With me, Walter Reed, as the sole trustee. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking, not with weakness anymore, but with a surge of adrenaline. I scrolled through my contacts, my heart pounding a steady, powerful rhythm. I wasn't just a father. I wasn't just an old man. I was the trustee, and the trustee had work to do. I found the number and pressed call. It rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. Carter Law Offices, Ben Carter speaking. Ben, I said, my own voice raspy but firm. It's Walter Reed. We have a problem, and I think you're the only one who can help me solve it. Ben Carter's office was an oasis of calm professionalism. Rich mahogany bookshelves lined the walls, filled with thick legal volumes that smelled of old paper and authority. It was a world away from the Starlight Motel. When I walked in, Ben's courteous smile faltered for a second as he took in my appearance. I knew I looked rough. I hadn't shaved in days, and the suit I'd been wearing since the party was rumpled and stained. Walter? My God, come in. Sit down. Can I get you some coffee? Water? Coffee would be good, Ben. Black, I said, sinking into one of the plush leather chairs opposite his desk. He listened without interruption as I recounted the entire sordid tale of the housewarming party. I told him everything. Gregory's speech, Brooks's coldness, the word encumbrance, the two men in suits, the taxi ride to the motel. I left nothing out. As I spoke, I could see the sympathy in his eyes curdle into a quiet, controlled fury on my behalf. When I finished, he was silent for a full minute, his fingers steepled under his chin. They did that in front of 100 people? He finally asked, his voice dangerously low. They did. And they think they have your power of attorney to manage your affairs? That's what Gregory said. Ben let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of any humor. Walter, they can't get power of attorney over a competent adult without your signature or a court order declaring you incompetent. They were blowing smoke. It was a performance, a power play to intimidate you and legitimize their actions in front of their friends. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by the cold anger that had been simmering for days. So, what can I do, Ben? They've taken my home. They've changed the locks. They're planning to stick me in a facility next week. Ben leaned forward, a predatory glint in his eye that I was profoundly grateful to have on my side. Walter, they haven't taken anything. They are temporary residents in a property owned by the Walter Reed Family Trust. And you, my friend, are the sole trustee of that trust. They live there at your pleasure, and it sounds to me like their presence is no longer a pleasure. He stood up and walked over to a formidable-looking filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder with my name on it. He laid it on the desk between us and opened it. Here it is, he said, tapping a paragraph with his pen. The trust document, clear as day. The trustee, Walter Reed, retains full and sole authority over all assets held within the trust. He may modify, amend, or revoke the trust at any time for any reason. They have no ownership, no equity, no legal standing whatsoever. They are, for all legal intents and purposes, tenants in a house you control. The words were like a balm on my wounded soul. I hadn't been a fool. My instincts, my engineer's caution, had been sound. I had built a failsafe, and now it was time to activate it. So I can kick them out? I asked. Oh, we can do much, much better than that, Ben said, a slow smile spreading across his face. A simple eviction would be quick, but it's not elegant. It doesn't address the sheer gall of what they've done. Gregory is a man who worships money and status. An eviction is just an inconvenience. What we need to do is dismantle the very foundation of the life he thinks he's built. What do you have in mind? Men like Gregory Maxwell are always over-leveraged, Ben explained, his mind clearly working at high speed. They live on credit, on perceived wealth. I would bet my license that the moment they felt secure in that house, Gregory started using it as collateral. He probably listed it as a personal asset on loan applications, maybe even tried to take out a home equity line of credit. The problem for him is He can't do that legally because he doesn't own the house. The trust does. If he has done that, it's bank fraud. My mind reeled. It sounded exactly like something Gregory would do. His arrogance was boundless. So we investigate, Ben continued, his voice electric with strategic energy. We do this quietly. I'll hire a private investigator I trust, a guy named Peterson, very discreet. We'll do an asset search on Gregory and his businesses. We'll check for any new credit lines, any liens filed against the property address. We need to see just how deep he's dug his own hole. Then when he's at his most vulnerable, when he's counting on that house as the bedrock of his financial empire, you, the trustee, will revoke the trust. What will that do? Revoking the trust means the asset, the house, reverts directly to you as personal property. It vaporizes any claim they thought they had. Any loan secured against it will be immediately called in by the bank. Any financial statement where he's listed it as an asset becomes fraudulent. It will trigger a cascade of consequences that will make his head spin. We won't just evict them, Walter. We'll bankrupt them with the truth. I sat back stunned. It was ruthless. It was devastating. And it was perfect. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice, delivered with the cold, hard precision of a legal document. They had tried to humiliate me, to discard me, but they had underestimated me. They had mistaken my generosity for weakness. There's just one more thing, Ben said, his expression turning serious. Your grandson, Leo. We need to consider him in all of this. My heart ached at the thought of the boy. He's an innocent, I said quietly. I don't want him to suffer. I agree, so, as part of this, I'll draft a separate document. We can set up a new, smaller, untouchable trust, an educational trust for Leo. We'll fund it with a portion of the assets from the main trust before we dissolve it. That way, his future is secure, no matter what happens to his parents. He'll know his grandfather provided for him. Tears welled in my eyes. It was the perfect solution. It separated my love for my grandson from the necessary punishment for his parents. It was a shield for the innocent. Do it, Ben, I said, my voice thick with emotion, but my resolve as hard as steel. Do it all. I walked out of Ben Carter's office a different man than the one who had walked in. The despair was gone, burned away by a cold fire. I was no longer a victim. I was an architect again, and I was about to draw up the blueprints for Gregory and Brooks Maxwell's complete and utter ruin. The week I was supposed to be transitioning to Pinecrest Meadows was instead spent in a clean, modest corporate apartment that Ben had arranged for me. It was a command center. The private investigator, Peterson, was a quiet, unassuming man in his 50s with eyes that missed nothing. He reported directly to Ben, and Ben relayed the information to me daily. What they uncovered was a testament to Gregory Maxwell's boundless arrogance and financial recklessness. Ben's theory had been right, but the reality was far worse than he'd imagined. It's a house of cards, Walter, Ben said during one of our evening calls, a note of grim satisfaction in his voice. A beautiful, shimmering, multi-million-dollar house of cards. Peterson had discovered that Gregory's venture capital firm was little more than a boutique consultancy teetering on the edge of insolvency. He was a master of appearances, leasing a fancy office and driving a luxury car to project an image of success that was entirely disconnected from his balance sheet. He was juggling debts, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and was desperately seeking a massive infusion of cash to stay afloat. The centerpiece of his scheme was a high-risk, high-reward tech investment he was trying to broker. He'd brought in a group of serious, old-money investors, promising them astronomical returns. To secure their trust and prove his own financial solvency, he had presented them with a personal financial statement, and listed right at the top, under personal assets, was the $1.4 million house in Willow Creek, listed as unencumbered real estate. He didn't just list it, Walter, Ben explained. He used it to get a bridge loan, a private, high-interest loan for $250,000 from a lender who clearly didn't do their due diligence on the property title. He needed that cash for a good faith deposit to get his big deal to the final stage. The loan documents are a mess of forged signatures and fraudulent statements. It's a felony. My blood ran cold. He hadn't just betrayed me as a father. He had used my life savings to commit a crime. But there was more. Peterson's surveillance of their social media was a goldmine. Brooks, flush with her new status, was posting constantly. Pictures of extravagant dinners, designer clothes, and of course, the house. There were photos of her and Gregory with the Wellingtons and the Posts, the very people they were trying to impress and, in some cases, swindle. One post from Brooks stood out. It was a photo of her and Gregory on the balcony, clinking champagne glasses. The caption read, "Celebrating the closing of the Maxwell Tech deal. The future is bright. So grateful for this new chapter in our beautiful forever home." Ben pounced on it. "The deal is closing? Peterson, find out when. We need the exact date." 2 days later, we had it. The signing was scheduled for the following Friday at 3 p.m. That was the day Gregory was expecting a multi-million-dollar wire transfer that would solve all his problems. That was the day his ship was supposed to come in. It was the perfect moment to scuttle it. During this time, I received a single saccharine voicemail from Brooks. "Hi, Dad," she chirped, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I hope you're settling in well at the hotel. Just wanted to let you know your suite at Pinecrest is just lovely. The director gave us a tour. I know you're going to be so happy there. We'll come visit as soon as we're not so swamped with the new house. Love you." The hypocrisy was so thick I could have choked on it. She didn't even ask if I was okay. She was just checking a box, assuaging whatever tiny sliver of conscience she had left. I deleted the message without a second thought. Our plan was meticulously crafted, worthy of an engineering blueprint. Ben prepared a package for the district attorney's office, detailing Gregory's bank fraud, but we would hold off on sending it. That was the final nail in the coffin. First, we had to pull the foundation out from under him. Ben drew up 2 primary documents. The first was the official revocation of the Walter Reed Family Trust. My signature on that paper would instantly and irrevocably return ownership of the house to me. The second was a formal eviction notice, giving the occupants, Brooks and Gregory Maxwell, 72 hours to vacate the premises. He also finalized the Leo Maxwell Educational Trust. I had him fund it with a generous $250,000. It was firewalled, ironclad, accessible only by a court-appointed third party until Leo turned 18. No matter how deep his parents sank, my grandson's future would be secure. Seeing that document signed and notarized was the only moment of pure, uncomplicated joy I felt that week. The day before the planned detonation, Ben and I had our final meeting. "Are you ready for this, Walter?" he asked, his gaze steady. "Once we start this process, there's no going back. It will be brutal." I thought of Helen's face, the pride she had in our daughter. Then I thought of Brooks's face at the party, cold and distant. I thought of the word encumbrance. "They made their choice, Ben," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "They chose a house over a father. I'm just giving them what they deserve. Let's get to work." We synchronized our watches. The trap was set. The bait was taken. All we had to do now was wait for the precise moment to spring it. Friday arrived, a brilliant, sunny California day. I imagined Gregory waking up in the master suite of my house, the ocean breeze wafting through the balcony doors. I pictured him selecting one of his expensive suits, knotting his silk tie, feeling like the king of the world. Today was his coronation day, the day the Maxwell Tech deal would close, making him a major player. I spent the morning at Ben's office. The air was thick with anticipation. We had a timeline, choreographed down to the minute. At 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes before Gregory's big meeting, Ben made his first move. He electronically filed the signed and notarized revocation of trust with the county recorder's office. With a single mouse click, the Walter Reed Family Trust ceased to exist, and the ownership of 114 Ocean View Drive, Willow Creek, reverted to Walter Reed. At 2:50 p.m., Ben placed a call to the fraud department of the private lender who had given Gregory the $250,000 bridge loan. He calmly identified himself and explained that his client, Mr. Walter Reed, was the sole legal owner of the property used as collateral, and that the trust which Gregory had likely used to muddy the waters had just been dissolved. He emailed them the freshly filed title document as proof. I could almost hear the panic on the other end of the line. High-interest private lenders don't like being defrauded. Their reaction would be swift and merciless. At 3 p.m., as Gregory was likely shaking hands with his investors, ready to sign the papers, Ben sent a second email. This one went to the lead investor in the Maxwell Tech deal, a notoriously shrewd and cautious old money patriarch named Alistair Finch. The email was polite but devastating. It contained a short note explaining that new information had come to light regarding the personal financial solvency of Mr. Gregory Maxwell, and attached for their due diligence was a copy of the official property record showing that Gregory had no ownership stake in his primary residence, contrary to the financial statement he had provided them. "And now we wait," Ben said, leaning back in his chair. We didn't have to wait long. At 3:17 p.m., my phone, which I had left on silent, lit up. It was Brooks. I ignored it. It rang again immediately. And again, a string of frantic text messages began to pop up on the screen. "Dad, call me now. It's an emergency. The bank is calling Gregory. Something is wrong. Dad, please answer your phone. What did you do?" The raw panic in those texts was a stark contrast to the breezy voicemail she'd left me days earlier. Ben's phone rang. It was Peterson, the PI, who had been discreetly monitoring the building where Gregory's meeting was taking place. "They're coming out," Peterson reported, his voice crisp. "The investors." Finch looks furious. Maxwell is right behind them. He's pale, sweating. They aren't talking to him. They just got in their cars and left. Maxwell is just standing on the sidewalk. Looks like he's going to be sick. The cascade had begun. The investors, spooked by the clear evidence of fraud, had pulled out. The multi-million-dollar deal had evaporated right before Gregory's eyes. At the same moment, the private lender, realizing they'd been had, would have frozen his accounts and started the legal process to reclaim their $250,000, plus penalties. At 4 p.m., Ben dispatched a process server to 114 Ocean View Drive. The server, a grim-faced man with an air of officialdom, handed Brooks the legal eviction notice, informing her and her husband they had 72 hours to vacate my property. At 4:30 p.m., the dam of Brooks's pride finally broke completely. My phone rang again. This time I answered it and put it on speaker. A hysterical sob came through the receiver. "Dad? Oh, thank God. Dad, you have to fix this. Gregory's deal fell through. The bank is calling. They're talking about fraud. And some man just came to the door and gave me a paper that says, 'We have to leave the house.' It's a mistake, right? You have to call them and tell them it's a mistake." I let her words hang in the air for a moment, the silence stretching out. "It's no mistake, Brooks," I said, my voice calm and even. It was a voice she hadn't heard before, devoid of fatherly warmth, stripped down to the cold, hard bedrock of fact. What are you talking about?" she stammered. You bought this house for us." "I bought the house, yes," I corrected her gently. "I bought it as an asset for a trust that I controlled, a trust whose sole purpose was to provide a home for my family, a family that included me. But it seems I was mistaken about the nature of that family. But, she was sputtering, unable to form a coherent sentence. "You had a choice, Brooks," I continued, my voice unwavering. "You could have had a father, a home, and a family. You and your husband chose to have an asset. You called me an encumbrance. You tried to have me locked away in a nursing home so you could maintain a lifestyle you hadn't earned and couldn't afford. You made a calculation, and you were wrong." I could hear Gregory in the background now, his voice a panicked roar. "What's he saying? Put him on. Give me the phone." The phone was snatched away, and Gregory's voice, usually so smooth and confident, was now ragged with desperation. "Walter, listen to me. You can't do this. You'll ruin me. Everything I've worked for is tied to this." "Everything you've stolen, you mean?" I countered. "The fraudulent loan, the false financial statements. Did you really think I wouldn't have fail-safes in place, Gregory? I'm a structural engineer. I know a weak foundation when I see one. And you, my boy, are built on sand." "I'll sue you," he shrieked. "I'll take you for everything you have left." Ben leaned towards the phone. "This is Ben Carter, Mr. Maxwell, counsel for Walter Reed. I'd advise you to choose your next words very carefully. We have a file detailing your financial crimes that is ready to be sent to the district attorney's office. You have 72 hours to vacate my client's property. If any item is damaged or missing, we will add felony theft and vandalism to the list. I suggest you get packing." The only sound from the other end was a strangled gasp, followed by the clatter of the phone hitting the floor. Then the line went dead. I looked at Ben. He gave me a slow, single nod. It was done. The house of cards had collapsed. The foundation had been pulled, and the entire rotten structure had come crashing down upon their heads. I didn't feel triumph, not exactly. Just a grim, profound, and utterly necessary sense of justice being served. The 72 hours passed in a flurry of activity. Ben hired a security firm to watch the house from a distance, ensuring Gregory and Brooks didn't try anything foolish. On the final day, I drove out to Willow Creek myself, parking down the street from the house. I watched as a small, battered U-Haul truck pulled into the driveway. It looked comically inadequate against the grandeur of the stone facade. I saw them. Brooks's face was puffy and streaked with tears. Gregory looked like a ghost. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a t-shirt. He moved with the defeated slump of a man who had lost everything and knew it. There were no friends helping them, no Wellingtons or posts. They were alone. They loaded boxes and furniture into the truck, a pathetic collection of belongings that now had to fit into a much smaller life. The last thing I saw was Leo, my grandson, carrying a small box of his toys to the truck. He looked confused and sad, and my heart broke for him. But I knew the educational trust was the best shield I could provide him against the fallout of his parents' greed. When they were gone, I waited another hour before walking up the driveway. Ben was there to meet me, along with a locksmith. The key they had taken from me was useless now. The locksmith installed new, high-security locks and then handed me a fresh set of keys. This time, the key in my palm didn't feel like a shard of ice. It felt warm, solid. It felt like my own. Walking into the house was a surreal experience. It was mostly empty. They had taken the furniture they'd brought with them, but the high-end appliances, the custom window treatments, everything I had paid for remained. The place felt sterile, stripped of the false life they had tried to inject into it, but it was mine. The next few weeks were about reclaiming my life. I moved my own things in from storage, the comfortable, worn furniture Helen and I had collected over a lifetime. I placed her picture on the mantelpiece in the great room, right next to a new one of Leo. The house began to transform from a cold status symbol into a warm, genuine home. The news of Gregory's downfall rippled through the community. The story, as pieced together by the local gossips, was that he was a fraud who had been living a lie, and his wealthy father-in-law had finally cut him off. He and Brooks moved into a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a town 60 miles away. Gregory's financial life was in ruins. The private lender sued him, the investors he'd courted ostracized him, and his reputation was irrevocably shattered. Ben held off on sending the file to the DA, keeping it as a final piece of leverage. It was enough that Gregory knew it existed, a sword hanging over his head forever. About a month after they left, I received a letter. It was from Brooks. It wasn't hysterical or demanding, but written in a small, shaky hand that I recognized from her childhood. It was 12 pages long. In it, she told me everything. How Gregory had been losing money for years, how the pressure to keep up appearances had become a sickness, how he had convinced her that I was a dotty old man whose money would be better managed by them. She didn't ask for forgiveness, not directly. She just laid out the ugly truth of her own weakness and complicity. "You raised me to be better than this," she wrote at the end, "and I failed you. I failed myself." I read it, folded it, and put it away. It wasn't a pardon, but it was a beginning. My relationship with my daughter is not what it was. Perhaps it never will be, but it is not nothing. We speak on the phone now, once a week. The conversations are strained, but they are honest. She is working as a receptionist, and Gregory is driving for a rideshare service. They are surviving. The true healing has come from Leo. With Brooks's hesitant permission, I started having him over on weekends. The first time he visited, he walked into the great room and just stared. "It looks different, Grandpa," he said. "It's happier now, buddy," I told him. We spend our time together. I teach him how to use my old woodworking tools in the garage. We walk on the beach. I tell him stories about his grandmother, Helen, and how much she would have loved him. In his eyes, I see the future. Not a legacy of wealth or property, but a legacy of love, integrity, and second chances. The house is quiet now, but it's a peaceful quiet. Sometimes I sit on the wraparound porch in the evening, watching the sunset paint the sky, and I think about the foundation of things. A house, a family, a life. They all need a solid footing. They need to be built with honesty, strength, and an understanding that true value isn't in what you own, but in what you are. My children tried to take my house. In the end, they forced me to come home. The story you just heard is a painful chapter of my life, but it's one I needed to share. It's a reminder that the deepest betrayals often come from those we trust the most, and that kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. My life's work was twisted into a weapon against me, but the very principles I live by, careful planning, strong foundations, and unwavering resolve, became my shield and my sword. I didn't just win back a house, I reclaimed my dignity, secured my grandson's future, and learned that sometimes the hardest thing a father has to do is teach his children a lesson they will never forget. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt underestimated, betrayed, or had to fight for what is rightfully yours, please let me know in the comments below. Your support means the world to me. Please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more true stories about life, loss, and the unshakable power of justice. Thank you for listening.